Thursday.
For the explanation part, do you just want to see like the mechanisms behind the different compounds, or do you
No,
want
you
like
don't
a-
need to do any mechanisms. I think if you just do like, just like a reaction scheme,
Okay.
you know, and then,
Do you want to say like, and then in like a paragraph form, kind of be like compound is going to be like blah 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 because of this.
but basically, if you just do the reactions, and
Yeah.
you get the products from the reactions, that tells you what it is. So you basically just take this out,
Right, and then
and
just
then you schematic it out. It's not like, so show how you arrive. Yeah, it's
Okay.
like the scheme part. And then just to explain the isoprene rule is like a sentence.
oh okay
It's not anything fancy.
okay
Right? So I think the struggle for some people is if you've taken OChem a while ago, you have forgotten those reactions because it goes in one year and out the other year. And some of them are really straightforward, some are less straightforward, or they're very particular. But that one about breaking down A, like in the ozonolysis thing, is just weird. So, but it has to do with stuff that you wouldn't know about. So it's like, but you don't need it, so just ignore it. It's not the easiest way to go. Because everything else points to. So there's something else going on. The one where your ozone A, ozonolysis A, is the weird one. The ozonolysis one down the road where you have EMF and you do ozonolysis on that one, that's like totally normal. Yeah, I don't
Because I was wondering, is A supposed to be really weird?
A is weird.
Okay.
A
that's
is
what I was
weird, so that's why it's just best to like shoot, you know. Yeah, if you get all, you know, the rest of it. Yeah, so, hey, what we're gonna do today, if we have time, is we're gonna do the whole, how you get into the cannabinoid system. Right? And we're just gonna focus on like THC and CBD, how you get into that, those systems, and talk a little bit about those systems today. And then we'll do the 50 million rearrangements and carbocation stuff, except it gets a little overwhelming. And it's not like this isn't totally overwhelming either, you know, just like stepping it out and getting here, right? And we start with acetyl-CoA, in terms of, once again, how we're gonna make the next guy, which is allantoic acid. And allantoic acid then reacts with geraniol biphosphate, which is the C10 monoterpene, like, you know, mother compound. So just this in itself is like super interesting, right? And so once you actually do that reaction with those two, that's what uses the THC synthase enzyme, which is a very unusual enzyme. And it's like it's the only one in its class that people know about right now. So this is a very interesting side pathway that is different than the standard terpene build it up stuff. And it's competing with the formation of the sesquiterpenes. Right? So that's why in the essential oil, you're going to see a high amount of monoterpenes versus sesquiterpenes because there's so much diversion of it going to make the cannabinoids. Whereas in other plants, it's often the reverse. All right, so we go to make allantoic acid. And we're going to do that from this acetic pathway. And the first big chunk of this is we need to make hexanyl-CoA first. And that's pretty straightforward. But there's some it's like really interesting how like the chemistry in the biological system is like mimics like everything we know about like lab type situations. So the first step is we're going to acetyl-CoA and we add CO2 to that. And actually in the next step, we're going to dump the CO2 out. So there's like a purpose for adding the CO2 to it, and it has to do with the reactivity of the alpha protons. Right, so if you remember, the alpha protons are on the carbon that's bonded to the carbonyl. So acetyl-CoA, we would just model that as an ester, you know, in terms of standard OChem like lingo. So if you look over here, so like a pKa of a standard ester proton is like 25, which is pretty low. You know, that's like in a regular lab, that's accessible by like sodium hydroxide, kind of, you know, in an equilibrium situation. And then once we get into like a diester scenario, then we're dropping like 10 orders of magnitude more acidic, right? And then beta keto esters. So you got one side of an ester group, one side of a ketone group, they're even more acidic, and then the most acidic is the beta ketone. All right, so the factors that play into that have to do with you have stabilization or destabilization by induction, and you have stabilization or destabilization by resonance. Right? So I have that on the next slide. We'll talk about it. So if you just consider, say, like the beta diester, beta ketoester, and beta ketone, you're going to have the same number of resonance states in each one of those, right? But but in the beta diketone, you don't have the additional electronegativity that comes with these groups right there. So that's like the driving force that runs that pKa. And if you think, I mean, that is like a huge shift. So in our target, in our acetyl-CoA, this is acetoacetyl-CoA is the product up here. So now we have that product is you can classify it as a beta diester type thing. The O minus is gonna be hooked up to some part of the enzyme that's gonna be like the counter ion to that, right? So we need an enzyme that can transport the CO2, activate it, and then transfer it over there. And that's gonna be like you gotta take that proton off, that CH3 group, and then a pair of electrons is gonna attack the carbonyl on the CO2, and that's how you're gonna add it on. That's pretty straightforward. All right, so if you think about this a little bit more too, so if you take that guy, base comes along, pulls that proton off, then we have our conjugate phase. So that's a carbanion Lewis structure. And then we also have the minus charge delocalized onto oxygen. So those are like the that's the standard resonance hybrid for enolate. Two resonance states. Then once we get our product, so this guy's our product right here, right? Now our product do the same thing, base comes along, sucks up the proton on the alpha, off of the alpha carbon, and we get our conjugate base. So conjugate base has two resonance states associated with it. We can either delocalize onto this carbonyl, which gives you this, or you can delocalize onto this carbonyl, which gives you this. So you have three resonance states for this guy. So typically, once you get the pKa down low enough, like in that 14 range and stuff like that, then that's how you refer to the alpha protons as being activated methylene groups. Methylene is just a CH2, right? So that is the only purpose of stuffing that CO2 on there, is to get this carbon more reactive, because what this carbon is going to do is it's going to do a biological Claisen reaction. So if you take an O2, you talk about aldols and Claisens in O2. And we're going to be doing a bunch of aldols and Claisens today. The condensation reactions. If you haven't had O2 or it's been a long time and you've forgotten, that basically what you have is a carbon nucleophile that is generated from an alpha carbon. So that means it's got to be a carbon that's next door to a carbonyl. And the carbon nucleophile, or the enolate, now typically it's standard practice in organic that you draw the most stable Lewis structure of a resonance hybrid, and that's how you communicate it. However, because the minus charge on the carbon is not the most stable resonance state, the minus charge on the oxygen is the most stable resonance state, because oxygen is more electronegative than carbon. However, the enolate behaves as a carbon nucleophile. So that's why it's easier when you're doing the mechanism to show it that way. But you have to understand that it's not a traditional approach to how you would draw the enolate. So you'll see it in books both ways, right? And if you start with the depiction of the enolate hybrid with the negative charge on the oxygen, then it's the pi electrons that do the attacking. So that's the difference between those two. So if your carbon nucleophile comes from an aldehyde or ketone and is reacting with an aldehyde or ketone, that's called an aldol. And if your carbon nucleophile comes from an ester, then it is called Claisen. And it can be ester reacting with, typically it's an ester reacting with a ketone is the most common kind of lab version that we kind of do. But there's like a ton of variations of these. And this was like lab-wise, they were very popular reactions that were studied at the end of the 1800s, early 1900s. And a lot of the variations on theme are all named after the people that worked with those variations on theme at the time. Right? Aldol was not a person, right? But Poison was, and there's like the Deacon and a bunch of them. Right? So anyway, it's just a standard one of those, right? So we have some more acetyl-CoA, and so the enzyme that is making this can bind more than one acetyl-CoA to it. And so what it does is it has the one that's the carbon nucleophile is bound to it, and then the one that's going to function as the electrophile is also bound to it. And the three-dimensionality of that location stuff is highly controlled. Because one of the big problems with these types of condensation reactions, if you do it in a solution, you can get competition from one molecule, like say we have the acetyl-CoA, we could have the carbanion version of that, then attack another molecule of the same thing, right? Because it's going to attack anything that's got a carbonyl on it, basically. So in solution chemistry, you have to really orchestrate everything to like lower your competition. But in the biological system, that's all done by the active site and the enzyme, right? There's only place for the binding of the specific nucleophile and electrophile. So that's kind of cool. So nucleophile attacks the electrophile, make your tetrahedral intermediate, which is this guy, and then you're going to reform the carbonyl and pick up the leaving group. This is a good leaving group. And that gets kicked out, and then it just gets protonated, and this is still like bound to the enzyme. All right. Then the next part, so like these beta keto guys, if you have like a beta keto acid, this is alpha, beta keto, and then this is like it. So then this can get released. So then this can decarboxylate. So now the CO2 we put on, now the CO2 we put on goes away. So it just decarboxylates out, and then we protonate, and then we have our acetyl-CoA. So it's kind of just like a standard type of mechanism that you learn know too. All right, so I picked this little drawing. This is kind of how you see stuff in like the biochem books or the farm books or stuff like that. We skip all the OChem stuff. So like that first part, like we just did the very, very first piece of that, right? So that big gray thing, that's the enzyme, right? Fatty acid synthase, and you can see like the is connected to the acetyl-CoA. We just did, so they coupled it, look how they drew up their little arrows there. It's like, it pains me when I see stuff like that. It's like, come on, people. But I think a lot of it is like, in biology, people just use arrows differently and they think differently about what arrows mean than the way that we do it in organic. So you always have to take the context into consideration. But yeah, the CO2 comes off and the acetyl group goes on. So now we're at this stage right here. Right? So now we have acetyl-CoA, which is basically a ketone. Well, it's really a beta keto ester. So then the next part's easy. We just do a straight up reduction. So it's just so the carbon's gonna get reduced, and we're gonna put the hydrogen from the carbon to the hydrogen on the oxygen, straight up reduction to the alcohol. So what's interesting about this is that you have the two carbonyls, one's on an ester, thioester, one's on a ketone, only the ketone one gets reduced. So it's a very specific kind of reduction. Right, in lab, we have lots of little reducing agents that we use to try and get that kind of specificity. We use sodium borohydride or lithium aluminum hydride, but we're always working on how do we get to do what we want to do when there's other functionalities there that can react with our stuff. So this is kind of good. So now we have alcohol, and now we can go straight into what's classical when you do alcohol and type reactions is you're going to do a dehydration, and you're going to do a dehydration because your product, here's the product is a conjugated enone, right? So if you have, so these three carbons are all going to be sp2 hybridized, and also the surface. But this is the key is enones, so their own functionalities, and they have their own kind of reactivities, but they are stable, right? Because you've got these molecular orbitals that cover more atoms. So the driving force, like the driving force for those dehydrations in solution is going to be thermodynamics. But most likely in an enzyme, it's kinetic, right? Because everything's held into position. So now the water is going to get expelled. So basically, you're most likely going to be doing this by D1 mechanism. So you protonate the OH group, probably with some amino acid, acidic side chain on amino acid. Protonate the OH group, it leaves carbocation, whatever's going to function as base, comes along, pulls off the beta hydrogen, and you form your double bond. And it's going to be directional because this is way more stable than if you dehydrate and say suck up this guy right here. So conjugation is always good. So we do that. Now we have our conjugated enone, and then we're going to do another reduction. And again, this is like the hydrogen is delivered through the NADPH, so it's like the same reducing type of delivery system as before, but now we're only going to reduce the double bond effect. Right? And so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons on there, and then what we have to do is do this all over again. It's kind of how we do it. And then you make hexaneal away from just cycling through this. All right, now, this is how you see it a lot in a variety of papers or textbooks or something. It will be like, oh yeah, we got hexaneal CoA, and look at these little arrows. Like we do have some little arrows, and then, oh, we have a levotolic acid, right? It's like, okay, how you get there, we don't really care about. But what is interesting about it is recently, so this paper is from 2012, is they have identified the enzyme and looked at the enzyme. And because of all, I mean, you've got to make the levotolic acid, and it's not like every plant does this. This is a very specialized scenario here. And that this enzyme is hanging out in these trichomes, right? So you've got, those little glandular trichomes, they're just like your little chemical factory. And so you've got your monoterpenes in there, your sesquies, all your enzymes that you need, and everything's just all happening right inside of that area, right, on the plant. All right, so they've got the enzyme, and it's going to do this. This is the only little chemistry part that puts that. An intermolecular alcohol with a carboxylate retention, so it doesn't decarboxylate. And then talk a little bit about protein and that's about it. Right? All we say. So I'm going to show you the whole thing. So we're going to go, it's like all on one slide. Because I hand wrote it, because that's like the only way to make it make sense. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, how well you're going to be able to see it, but you'll be able to print it all out afterwards, and then we'll just go over it. All right, so just like overall, they just tell you nothing, right? So the direction I did it is start at the top, and it goes across the top, down here, and then down here, up and around here, up here, up, back up, and then around, and then down here.
Quite the reaction.
So it's like 15 steps altogether. But it was just easier to do this and just try and, because you forget, as we're going along. And it's really straightforward because it's just like you scan the whole mechanism, but there's some interesting aspects to it. So start up at the top, right? You have hexanyl-CoA. So if you look at that, we've got carbonyls on carbon 7, carbon 5, and carbon 3, and carbon 1. So 1, 3, 5, and 7. So that's a lot of alpha protons in there because all the protons on on the CH2 between all those carbonyls, they're all alpha protons. So a base can come along and suck any one of them off to make a carbanion. Right, but the one that gets sucked off is the CH2 group. That's the beta keto ester one, not the other ones, which the other ones are all beta keto ones. The beta keto ones actually have lower pKa's than the beta keto ester one. So whatever aspect of happening in that enzyme is controlled at a very specific pKa versus, so it may have to do with like the three-dimensional geometry, right? Because otherwise it would be like, well, why aren't you pulling them off the other proteins? So that's kind of interesting. So we make our carbanion right there, it's at carbon 2, right? And carbon 1 is the carbonyl from acetyl-CoA. All right, so we have like our enolate now, and when you do clasons and aldehydes and stuff, what you do is you just attack a carbonyl. So instead of having it be a different molecule, now we're going to do an intramolecular one, right? Intramolecular ones in solution are favorable because they don't require collision. And this stuff is just like folded up in a conformation that allows for the overlap. And so in that enzyme, it's going to all be held in position so that that electron pair in the enolate is going to be right on top of that carbonyl trigon type thing. So we get our intermolecular alcohol. Alright, so we get TAC, and that is gonna give us, so then we now have our 6-membered ring, and we have a negative charge on our oxygen, and we protonate that. So now we have our alcohol, and we're gonna dehydrate. So dehydrate, we protonate the OH group first, make it into a better leaving group. It leaves, we make the carbocation. And look, it's nice here, tertiary carbocation. Life is good. Come along, pull off that beta hydrogen. And we have our enone right here. And this is a really nice enone because we have enone going this way, we have enone going this way, and we don't have an enone going this way, so we have CH2 right there. But this is all stabilized by all these overlapping molecular orbitals. So that's really cool. And then what we want to look at is keto-enol protonization. So under acidic conditions, right, you're gonna have like an equilibrium between the keto form and the enol form. All right, so and it has to do with this particular carbonyl, and it's like, okay, well, why is it that particular carbonyl? Well, it could be because of fixed geometry, but it's like this is an enone on an ester, this is an enone on a ketone type of thing. So this gets protonated, so now it's protonated, and a protonated carbonyl has a resonance state where the plus charge is on carbon, right? So plus charge is on the carbon, and then water functions as base, comes along, sets off that proton, and we make an double bond right here. So now we have like the enol. So it's like this is the enol, this is the ketone versions of these are in equilibrium with each other, like the solution. So now we have this. Now the next part. Alright, so now we're going to look at the enol for this guy. So now we protonate this guy. So we got the protonated OH group right here. And then, oh, I did this a little bit separately. I did this. I probably got a boo-boo on my writing. It's like, okay, I'm not rewriting this, you know? Yeah, so here's the OH with the positive charge, and then I did not show, okay, so the resonance state, here's the positive charge. And then base comes along, pulls out that beta proton, gets your double bond, so now you're up here. So now, what's cool about that is now you're aromatic. So you're into an aromatic system. So then now you have like mega stability that comes from all of that, right? So that's cool. So now you've got like a diphenol type of scenario, and then you've got these side chains hanging up in there. And then the next part is going to be and the next part up here is then hydrolysis of the thioester. Right? So to hydrolyze the thioester, you use protonated carbonyl. Water attacks that protonated carbonyl. Right? And then so that gets you to step 12. And then then what you have to do is protonate and deprotonate. So you deprotonate the oxygen, and then you have to protonate sulfur. So I just did that intramolecularly. So you can either do that as 2 separate steps or do it the intramolecular way. in solution, 2 separate steps involve 2 collisions. And the intramolecular way actually has a nasty transition state. So actually the collisions are probably more likely than the nasty transition state. But for bookkeeping purposes, it's just really easy to do it that way. So then you reform the carbonyl, dump out the leaving group, which is going to be the acetyl-CoA with the sulfur with the hydrogen on it, the thiol. And so we got rid of that, so now we have carboxylic acid. And and then we just deprotonate that protonated carbonyl, and now we have our carboxylic acid. So olivotolic acid is a carboxylic acid that's aromatic. Right, so basically, if you look at that, that is a substituted benzoic acid, like by OCHEM term. So you've got like this little hydrocarbon tail on here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbon tail. And then you've got these 2 OH groups. And so you remember, like, if you had O2, that normally when you look at the equilibrium between in an enol type situation, the ketone or the carbonyl version is way favored in the equilibrium compared to the vinyl alcohol type of one, right? However, that is not true in the case of aromatic phenols, right? So here's like this is like a vinyl alcohol right here, right? And so normally that would be like, no. But in the case of benzene rings, the case of phenols, it's always the alcohol form, the vinyl alcohol, enolate equilibrium piece that is highly favored because you have the stabilization due to the aromaticity of the benzene ring. So that's how we make the olivotolic acid. All right. And here's just like, all right, now once we make that, then we can attack the geraniol OPP, which is like our mother compound from the terpene line. We've got lots of that around. So in order to make a nucleophile out of olivotolic acid, you look at the carbonyl resonance state associated with that ketone enol tautomerization. Okay? So, so then the reactivity of that can do a simple straight up SN2 on your GPP, because your GPP has your leaving group attached to a primary carbon. So you just do, so like previously, when we've been talking about the terpene pathways, this guy just drops off and you generate like a carbocation. That's like SM1 style. Whereas this setup is like a complete SM2 style. So that's like a little variant on the commentary here. So you just do that straight up SM2 and shove this GPP group on here, and then whatever's acting like the base pulls this proton off, and you regain aromaticity. Right? So this gets you into the cannabinoid system. So this is cannabigerolic acid here. And one of the hallmarks of all of this is this carboxylic acid group right here. All right, so you'll see this when we talk about them all in more detail. But this scenario, this can decarboxylate quite easily and give off CO2 and then you just replace it with hydrogen like that. It's very labile in that way. Right, so that gets us into that system. So, so it's kind of like, so it's got like the terpene kind of piece going on over here, but it's also got this like aromatic piece that's really plain where it's going on the other side. All right. So it doesn't end there. So the next part is, okay, if you just look at what that acid looks like, right, we have, so it's like the allylic system is bonded to the aromatic system. So those protons, those allylic protons, they're also benzoic protons. So the position that's carbon right next door to a benzene ring is the benzoic position, and those are called benzoic protons. So if I make a carbocation at that position, it is mega stable, right? Because you've got the two carbons of the carbon and the allylic part, the vinyl part, they're sp2 hybridized. My carbocation is sp2 hybridized, and all the carbons in the benzene ring, they're also sp2 hybridized. So they're all one big giant molecular orbital. Right? So that carbocation is nice and stable. And so I'm going to make that carbocation, and then it's an allylic carbocation, and so it's going to exist as a resonance hybrid. Now, what I did is I skipped a lot of the drawing part because it's very repetitive. It's just like what we did in the monoterpene case and in the sesquiterpene case. So, say you've got, so like in the terpene case, there was OPPs that were coming on and off, right? And so in this case, it's protons that are coming on and off. That is the difference between the two. So if you have, once you make the carbocation, right, it's going to have, its geometry is going to be completely locked in because those molecular orbitals, they cover a lot of atoms, but there's no rotation in an actual molecular orbital. All right, so so you've got the so the proton comes back on the top one, and so I go backwards. Then if I look at my other resonance state for the allylic carbocation, I have right here. So I can put a proton on right there. Once I put that proton on, then I can have free rotation around that carbon-carbon bond, right? It would be free rotation between this carbon and this carbon. So it would like, that whole thing would rotate. And then I could, the proton can come back off. If the proton comes back off, then I get this carbocation. So they're conformational isomers of each other. So they're really, so this one and this one, so really this shouldn't be a difference, because they're conformational isomers. So this one and this one, because if you look at it, these are both, like the hydrogens here are trans, the hydrogens on that one, they're trans as well, right? So structurally they're the same, they're not diastereomers of each other, they're the same molecule, they're just conformational isomers. However, what's handy about this conformational isomer is that I have a way now of this high electrons like here are right in position to form a bond with the carbocation right here. All right, skipping another step too. So if you look at this, when you're in this confirmation, then the resident, so now we're locked in terms of where everybody is. Then this is like the tertiary line, and then I'm going to my other resident state, secondary line. So it exists as a hybrid with everybody in position with a delta positive at this carbon and a delta positive at this carbon. And so high electrons can attack that delta positive at that carbon, and now I have another ring. So now I have benzene ring, I got a substituted benzoic acid, and now I have a cyclohexene ring as well. And when I do that closure, that's my carbocation right here. Yeah, so then basically we're going to talk about, we're just going to talk about a couple of different fates with this carbocation right now, and then later when we, so like there's 113 cannabinoids, right? And they're organized into families based on structural elements, and those families are determined really by the fate of the carbocation and the subsequent cascade. There's a couple of families that are associated with degradation products of the initial set that you make, right? But the whole thing, so like all of this, right, is all orchestrated by the THC synthase enzyme, which is an unusual enzyme, right? And so, what do I want to say? But that enzyme is the one that gets us to this carbocation, and then you'll have other enzymes that direct things. So the amount of any particular enzyme that you have, or whether you have them or not, is controlled by the genetics of the plant. So each different variety is going to have different genetics. All right, so that's it. Yeah.
I'll make that an exam or homework. You want us, if we're going to mechanism, you want us to show like the opposite protons?
Yes. Yeah, you want to show, yeah, this is always a sticky point. If you're doing a mechanism like question, you want to show every gory little step, right? And not rejecting the stuff. Because it's like a minor point, but it's major at the same time. It's like, there's a big difference between resonance states and conformational isomers and diastereomers and all those things. And it's easy to get them all mixed up in your mind, but which is why in homework and tests and stuff like that, we have you lay it all out. All right, so major, so like the two main cannabinoids are delta-9 THC and CBD. So the route to CBD, you need, so we got the TH synthase, so we made our precursor carbocation, and now we need the CBDA synthase. So the A just means it's got the carboxylic acid still on it. So like CBD that you go buy in the store, it has been decarboxylated. So when it's decarboxylated, it's just without the A. So you'll see the same thing, THCA, every single one of them has an A form. That's part of why you have 113 of them, because you got the A forms with the acid on, and then you got the decarboxylated ones without the acid on. All right. So we got that little tertiary cation. So pretty easy in terms of what kind of faith that guy's gonna have, because now we're all completely trained on how to eliminate from the color coloring. So one of the things that we can do is just eliminate when the methyl group protons, and we get the CBDA. So CBDA, what you want to notice in CBDA is it has two stereo centers. I have a stereo center on the cyclohexene ring that's connected to the benzene ring. Right? And then it also has a stereo center with 3 carbon substituent bonding to the cyclohexene ring. So then the question is, okay, what do we have here? Right, we have four possible stereoisomers that we could have. Right, so what does our plant make? And how are we going to figure that out? Right? So this picture right here shows you exactly what the stereo centers are. Right? And we talked about that. And then to make CBD, you get this spontaneous decarboxylation. And that decarboxylation is facilitated by heat. Primarily, it's done by heat, like in like production style. People are working on how to figure out how to get it to go enzymatically, because if you can get it to go enzymatically, then you don't have to heat it up, and if you don't have to heat it up, then you can minimize your oxidation and degradation products. So there's like, that's an area of research and like making product right now. All right, so CO2 comes off and you get your CBD. So what about these stereo centers right here? You go look this up, and here's your CAS number for CBD, and here's the official IUPAC name, right? The 1R6R, right? You know, so it's all laid out. We're going to talk about this. This is like first drug that's been FDA approved. So we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so the key is the stereochemistry. How did they figure that out? Right, because now we just take it like, oh yeah, it's all done. So the stereochemistry was figured out in 1971 by Meckelon, who is like the big grandfather, head honcho, ever of cannabis research. The guy is amazing, absolutely amazing. And he is located in Israel, and he has been working on this stuff since those days, probably, I don't know when his first paper came out, but he's got 1 million papers, has done absolutely fabulous work. So, so this paper is from 1971, and this is how they did it. It's like, you know, like the amount of work that goes into figuring all this stuff out. So they got the, well, because you have to get it into forms that you can deal with. So they hydrogenated it. They get the 2 epimers, X1X, up there. So they just reduce it to get rid of double bonds. So if you reduce it to get rid of the double bonds, you haven't done anything to the stereo centers. Right, so your stereo centers remain the same, so that gives you X1X. Then they could, so, where are they saying C1 is? Oh. Okay, if you, okay, So if you hydrogenate that double bond in a cyclohexene, you're gonna generate a stereocenter where the methyl group is on that double bond, right? So you're gonna generate both the R and the S. So that's how you get the two versions of X1X, right? You're gonna get epimers are like diastereomers. So it's saying, I know I have an R, I just generated myself an RNS at that stereocenter when I hydrogenated it. So I know I'm gonna have like some compounds that are gonna be diastereomeric. Right, and so then they were able to isolate that by column chromatography. This was before flash chromatography was really invented, so it's kind of old style. And then, so they get that, and then whichever one, so it's the most polar, the chlorophyll, I guess is the most polar one, is the one that came up first, but not positive unless I read the experimental. They took that one and they oxidized that with potassium acetone, and then they esterified it, and they made a methyl ester with this diazomethane, and then they were able to put it through the GC. Right? Now, the prep vapor-phase chromatography, that's like a prep style GC where you have like a thick column that's like metal, but they're like this big round, and they're packed, and then you heat the stuff up and it works like contemporary GC. This was prior to like contemporary GC that we do with like the really teeny columns now. So they got that and they collected it on the end. Right, so that's basically how they purified it. So they purified it, and then they stuck it in the polarimeter, and they got a -40-degree rotation. Right? So it was identical. So IR, NMR, TLC, rotation, all of that crap with XXB. XXB is not here. Which was they synthesized from purchase minus menthol. Right? So they did that in the lab. So they purchased that all the way through, and then they methylated that. And they kept going, you know, and then where's XXB? So they did XSA, R equals H, XSB, R equals CH3, so that's the methyl ester, right? Right, from, and so they did the degradation of cannabidiol, they get the same thing, and let's see, it was the same as XXA, which they prepared from menthol. And then, so this is how you figure out the R and the S, right? So natural menthol had already been predetermined because of its association with glyceraldehyde. So that goes way back into the original big D, big L designations. And then once they got X-ray crystallography going, you could actually figure out exactly what the three-dimensionality was in the chiral sensors of compounds associated with glyceraldehyde. And then as long as you do reactions subsequent to that, where you don't mess with the stereo center, then you still know what the RNS of the stereo center is. Because that's just a nomenclature thing. So they did that, and then, so they got the absolute configuration of cannabidiol. And then they converted it, so this is the other thing, so then you convert cannabidiol into, so they said delta 1 THC, we'll talk about that, that's old style nomenclature, like there's all sorts of minor headaches in the nomenclature department, including the fact that there's two completely different systems, but we're down to one system now. All right, so they got that all going, and so they got both of those programs as R. And then the important part here, in terms of what everybody believes everything, is somebody else did it as well, in a different way, right? And they were copacetic with each other. And then what you also do is you also confirm it by doing total syntheses of optically active protons of known chirality, where you don't mess with those stereo centers. So it's not like an easy task, but once it's done, it's done. That's like the big point. So what we have in terms of our compound then is a very specific stereoisomer, right? We have the RR version only out of 4 possible stereoisomers that we can have, or stereoisomers that we can have. So that's another part about what makes the whole cannabinoid system complex. It's the number of stereocenters, the number of options that you can have, and the specificity that you're actually seeing within the family. And then you gotta take that into consideration. Then if you're trying to do research and you're trying to make compounds, say in the lab, and then see what they do, but you gotta get the right stereoisomers, because if you don't receive a mixture, it can behave very differently from a specific stereoisomer in a biological system. Okay. So back to our carbocation, it's like the most straightforward common sense stuff you can possibly imagine. We got it eliminated to make CBD, and all we do is do an intramolecular hydration with our OH group right here to form our delta 9 THC. So here's our delta 9 THC acid. The delta 9 has to do with the location of the carbon right here. So we have our THC acid, we carboxylate, and then we have our THC. So same dealy bob right here, exactly RR, right? And RR up there. So what you want to be aware of is this connectivity here. This is like a trans relationship right here, and also in the CBD. So here's our THC CAS number, official IUPAC number, an official IUPAC name, which is important to, there are so many like old-timey names, but you don't use those old-timey names, except I'm going to show you how it gets used, because this whole thing about THC, it has a generic trade name. It has a real trade name too, like you can buy it generic, or you can buy it name brand. This is the biggest hoax, scientific, pulling the wool over the public's eyes I have ever seen. And everybody who knows any science knows it. It's like, you've got to be joking, right? Because as you know, THC is a Schedule 1, classified as a Schedule 1 drug, international, held by the USA and under international auspices, but you can just go get a prescription. Not for THC. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So, but, you know, like, those carbocation things, those are two, like, super simple roots, and then you can just know, like, there's all this other stuff in it, right? All right, a little bit about what I'm bringing up, because this will drive you nuts. If you look at older papers, you're gonna see this is the old system, right? So in the old system, then the serial centers are on carbon 3 and 4. And we also have, the double bonds right here, delta 9 THC, but there's also other positions of the double bond, so you have other THC besides delta 9 THC. So that's why this framework does not have double bonds in it. All right. So you'll see naming, it will be this delta 1, right? Because this is where the double bond is. All right, now the new naming is the one above. So the benzene ring is primary. So you start counting around your benzene ring. And so it's the first 4, then that internal ether 5, and then around that ring, and then I don't get why you have a 6A and a 10A personal. It's like, it's like there's no rhyme or reason to those like UPEC rules, but that's just how they do it. So 6A and 10A are the 2 stereo centers, right? And then the double bond is between 9 and 10. But I think that nomenclature makes more sense than this one, because the problem is the other location for the pi bond is right here between 1 and 6. So the lowest number of that would still be 1. So then it would be conflicted. Like, does one mean going this way, or does one mean going this way? Okay, so it's just weird. Whereas the one above, it's like, you can either have delta 9 or delta 8, whatever you want. But anyway, just so you have that. So you just want to make sure, like in the new stuff, that you know, like, which set of nomenclature they're going with. All right. And then the other thing is, so it's just really easy. This goes back to like parent compound. So cannabidiol acid can decarboxylate, and when that decarboxylates, that makes CBG. And you need that CBG a good amount. And this is what this test number is. And the primarily the most amount of research, especially in the medical arena, has been done on CBD and then THC, and then CBG is the up and coming one. But then the issue is, well, what do we do about all the rest of them? Because, as you see, it's complicated. All right. So we got that guy. All right. So let's just talk about the drugs, like the pharmaceuticals. All right. So there's this stuff that is this 1-to-1 aerosol of THC and CBD. And this was approved as a, as a drug that could be prescribed by people in Canada and then in the UK. And then these are the trade names that it was sold under in those countries. And so Navaxamol is the class for here. And what it does is it contains pretty much these equal amounts of two. And this is the important part, that it was developed and then manufactured by GW Pharmaceuticals. So GW Pharmaceuticals is an English company, and they have a American subsidiary called Greenwich Biologicals that's coming up, because this has to do with all the new legal stuff that just happened. All right, and GW Pharmaceuticals has spent, they do a lot of research, and their whole goal is to make cannabis-derived pharmaceuticals for various and sundry populations. The biggest target populations right now are patients who have motion issues, which is like the MS, right? And so those other diseases that go into that category, like Huntington's and Lou Gehrig's, and that they're trying to figure out how the motion thing works, like at the, it's like at the biological level in the body, right? But it was prescribed in the for people who have multiple sclerosis. However, FDA doesn't, we're kind of behind on that one. Right? So if you want that, you have to go to Canada. Then we have CBD, straight up CBD. So GW Pharmaceuticals then went to work on Epidiolex, which is just straight CBD. And so their American company now is Greenwich Biosciences, and they're in Carlsbad, California. And now they're working on, since the Farm Bill went into effect January 1st of 2019, which legalized Epidiolex, and it's like, this is why it's so crazy. So they legalized Epidiolex, so now they can actually manufacture it at that plant in Carlsbad, California, where previously they could not. All right, now what it gets used for is this intractable epilepsy scenario. So this Dravet syndrome, this childhood epilepsy, these are children, there's like a cluster of different diseases that are kind of bundled together, but these are children that have multiple seizures a week or even per day. So we're talking intensity of, it's just unbelievable, right? And let's do a little history of it in terms of why it's called Dravet syndrome and Charlotte Dravet, which is why, like the Stanley Brothers, so this is our homegrown stuff. So the Stanley Brothers, it's a Denver company, they make Charlotte's Web. And Charlotte's Web hemp oil, which is straight CBD. And because they got involved in this because of this whole epilepsy situation. And there were people who had kids with this that were moving to Colorado to get so that they could purchase this without having to do it through the mail, because it got shut down in terms of doing it through the web, because all isomers of THC were Schedule 1 type nasty, right? And so there's that problem. But based on just like how it was going, they did like phase 1 trials, phase 2 trials, phase 3 trials. So you have to go through this huge operation with the federal government. And one of the trials was done with at Children's Hospital here in Denver. And if you look on their website, I think they're still looking for patients, but the last part I read, it was supposed to be closed down by now, but they may not have had enough people, so they extended the trials out. But then the results were positive enough that the FDA approved Epidiolex. Okay, so Epidiolex is just straight up CBD RR stereo centers, right? From, this is what I'm saying, it's the same stuff, right? And, so this is the link to the study at Children's Hospital. So anyway, that kind of gives you a little basis for that. Then, it's not, okay, so that's that, okay. Or if you throw in a little bit, you're probably gonna get a lot of other stuff. Because that's the problem, once you switch out into solutions chemistry, you get everything. Like if you do it in the plant, you just get what the plant wants to make. Alright, so this is all the new needs. So the Farm Bill, so this all got passed at the very end of 2018. Right, this is a big review. Although it's like, there is so much great stuff, it's like crazy. So the Farm Bill got passed, and so it removed hemp from the Controlled Substances Act. So now hemp is considered just like an agricultural commodity, right? Whereas marijuana, or so they still call it marijuana, cannabis, the plant, is a controlled substance. Right? So if you grow, this is why it's kind of like, okay, it's kind of loosey-goosey. So if you grow the cannabis so that you don't have any THC in it, but you got tons of CBD, then you can extract it, and that's how you get your CBD out, right? And under Colorado law, which is kind of like the federal description, you are considered hemp if you have less than 0.03% THC, right? So that when you grow the hemp, you can make like robes, you can make material, you can make like anything out of the fibers. Or you could be growing that so that you can extract the CBD, right? So there's two worlds there. Right. Now, and they redefined it, so like, this is all good, you know, that to include the extracts, cannabinoids, and the derivatives, and, they removed, like, CBD out of that Controlled Substance Act. THC is still in there, but CBD is out. Now, so according to that law, right, the Farm Bill, then the DEA cannot mess with the commerce of the product as long as it's below the 20%, right, which is kind of always been the standard. So then you would say, okay, well then CBD's like, you should be able to go buy it anywhere in the country, mail order, you know, order off the web, whatever have you, right? So the problem is that the FDA, right? So you've got like, the Congress passes the Farm Bill and now everybody's all on board. And then you got the FDA portion of the government sending out nastygrams to everybody who makes CBD, right, to put them on notice that they don't consider, it's like nuts, right, that they don't consider food or dietary supplements or whatever as being under that purview of what was in the Farm Bill. Right, so it's this gray stuff that is going to be legally challenged as soon as they do something with somebody. So, because you've got one part of government saying one thing and one part of the government saying something else. And the information, the place where I got this is the hemp industry. There's like a big group in America for people who grow hemp, both for CBD oil and hemp for other purposes. And there is like a big conglomerate, group, and it has on its board of directors, a bunch of people from different companies, and then companies also subscribe to them, and they will, that is their personal opinion of this body that, CBD is 100% legal in the US, anywhere, any place, and they will take that on if anybody gets busted for anything, right? But it is like kind of gray stuff. So that's like the CBD stuff. So now, Epidiolex is a prescribed drug that you can go to the doctor and get a prescription for Epidiolex, and its on-label use is epilepsy. Now we get to Marinol. Because Marinol, this is where you get the wool really pulled over your eyes. So Marinol is delta-9 THC. That's exactly the same thing as what's in the plant. You just mix it in the lab. Right? It's a synthetic identical version. You make it in the lab. Right, now, it has been approved, it was approved by the FDA in 1985. Right, so here they are approving a compound that you make in the lab that is exactly 100% atom for atom, stereo center for stereo, for every single thing identical to what's in the plant. Plant one's illegal, but this one is legal. Huh? You can't. Can you?
You can just extract
If
out
you
THC
purified
and
it,
purify and say,
If you purified it, how are you gonna know what the difference is? Because they're identical. That's the entire argument that you use with all sorts of stuff. I mean, the argument from the medical side is like people who are into like health foods and, like think of it more holistically, they're gonna say, okay, if you consume THC in the plant, you're also consuming all this other stuff that's in there with it, like the terpenes, the monosesquies, all the other cannabinoids, and all together, they all complement each other, and the efficacy of whatever you're doing biologically is increased, right? So that's the position of do it in the natural form. The other position, which is more like, okay, here's your pure stuff, we know what it does, here you go, just take pure stuff, right? It's like the Western pharmaceutical method, one molecule, one action, one outcome, right? But it's the legality of it all, like, why are we saying that I can give you a prescription and that's totally legal, but you can't grow, I mean, you can't take it if it's in the plant, right? That's like saying, okay, you can have your vitamin C if I make it in the lab, but you can't get your vitamin C if you're making rosé tea, right? It's like, but anyway. So with and we're going to talk about what the synthesis is, the lab synthesis. It's quite well defined. It's not, I mean, it's challenging, it's not that challenging. It's a whole lot easier to extract it from the plant, let me tell you. Now we have really high THC percent, so it's even easier if you extract it from the plant because, you don't have a lot of waste material. But approved by the FDA in 1995 cancer patients. And then later, during the AIDS epidemic, definitely approved for anorexia. That was one of the biggest problems with late-stage AIDS, is extreme anorexia and wasting. So it did that. So phenomenal is past time. Is a generic and Marinol is a trade name and it's controlled drug. The only thing I wanted to show you is like how the
they use some old type name that it's like, if you didn't know what you were talking about, you wouldn't guess that they were the same thing, right?
And it's manufactured in North Carolina by a company, currently by this company, Patheon, which is, System Scientific, which is one of the biggest instrument companies around, you know, and whatever. Just saying. Anyhow, we'll talk about more of this stuff later. And then we'll